In the East Riding of Yorkshire, on the eastern edge of the Yorkshire Wolds, is this extraordinary church, St Mary's, Dalton Home. The church was built between 1858 and 1861 on the site of a dilapidated brick church in South Dalton. It was designed to replace this old church and a semi-derelict medieval church in the neighbouring hamlet of Home on the Wolds. It was commissioned by Beaumont Hotham, the third Baron Hotham, an MP who was also the Lord of the Manor, and it was built opposite the gates of his house, Dalton Park. No expense was spared, and the church cost Lord Hotham £25,000, a staggering sum even for a man as wealthy as he. The talented architect Hotham chose for the work was John Loughborough Pearson, whose most well-known work later in his life was the design of Truro Cathedral in Cornwall. Pearson, then in his early 40s, was at the height of his creative powers, and he was already busy in East Yorkshire, where he was involved from 1856 in several church rebuilds for Lord Hotham's near neighbour, Sir Tatton Sykes of Sledmere. Pearson was a Gothic revivalist who is in love with the style of architecture that was prevalent in England in the middle of the 13th century, a point in time where the austerity of what is termed the early English style, the first phase of Gothic, was giving way to the beginnings of the flamboyance that would characterise the next phase of the evolution of English architecture, often called the decorated style. The tower at South Dalton, topped by the spire which rises to a staggering 208 feet, can be seen from some distance from the flat lands to the east. The height of the tower is made all the more dramatic by its slender proportions. Although Pearson had derived the elements of the design from the architecture of the 1240s and 50s, the work is not a slavish imitation of medieval work. It is inspired by it, and no medieval mason would have built such a slender tower. All told, this church is a fine example of Victorian architectural and religious self-confidence. Victorian English Gothic Revival architecture sought to recapture the magic of the Middle Ages, a perceived visual, cultural and religious high point in England's history. It was an attempt to root the present in the past, but through innovation, such buildings were no simple pastiche, but were a fresh reinterpretation of tradition.